Business time. You need a job, and I need some extra hands.
And thank you, Gnomon, for having us here. We're very excited. I'm excited to just show all this crazy stuff we did on Bad Guys, too. It was a challenging show for me, so yeah, it's nice to share. So I've got a lot to show, so let's just get into it here. Let's talk about the Bad Guys animation style real quick. So these are a few images from our style guide that I'm going to show, which was put together by J.P. Sands, who is the co-director on Bad Guys 2 and the head of character animation on Bad Guys 1. So Jorge Capote also worked on this. He was an animator and character design who helped establish the look of the characters quite a bit. So this was sort of our Bible. So obviously silhouette was super important to us. It was all about the jelly bean and the facial features. Everything was very rounded off, the mouths and the eyes. And you can also see where, he's getting into some of the expression lines in the upper right. And those were actually controls we had on the rigs that we could move around and pose as we wanted. Some eye shape reference, very important to keep these characters on model, so we really stuck to these shapes as much as we could. Again, you can see the expression lines and like where we should be placing them, and we had total control over that. Some mouth shape reference. You can see there's a lot of different teeth in there. We had a lot of stunt teeth on these characters that we could swap in and out. So a lot of choices, but this kind of told us what the rules were and when we could break them. And hand posing, super, super important. So this is just talking about appeal in our hand poses, and how to get like a dynamic expression through the arms and the hands. So. And then I want to talk a little bit about spacing, which was a key to our animation style. So spacing is a change in pose from one frame to the next, and the distance that travels. So Bad Guys takes a lot of inspiration from traditional 2D animation, of course, and we exaggerated the spacing based on that. So the animators would choose only the poses that are critical to convey the motion. So for example, here you'd see normal spacing, you have all those in-betweens. In Bad Guys spacing, we just hold that pose for that amount of frames, and then we would slam it down over one frame. And this exaggeration really makes the performance more impactful and more graphic. And so we help the audience track that motion with smear frames, which are the drawings that you can see in that image on the right there. And that, really kind of describes that line of action for the audience so they can follow it. And motion blur wouldn't work for us in this case because you're moving from point A to point B. If I have my arm up here and I need it to swing down here and do it in one frame because I just want it to be super sharp, I can't do that with motion blur because you're just going to get a blur from here to here and you're not going to know what happened. So I can do it as long as I draw in those lines. And so we were doing that and planning for that as we were animating. So here it is in motion. I'm going to try to play this. So this is normal spacing in CG. She's just moving through that and interpolating through that. And then this is Bad Guy spacing. So did you see that? Like how much sharper it is? I'll play it again. Chunk. There it is. All right. And then we're going to watch it a bunch of times. Okay. Animation development. So this is our time in pre-production, the pre-production schedule for animation to start testing out the character rigs and developing the character's personality and their behaviors through various performance tests. So it's a very collaborative process with a lot of back and forth, obviously with directors, but also with rigging, sometimes modeling and cloth character effects. So as we are getting these characters ready for production, there's a lot of tweaking that's happening with all departments. And usually the supervisors, like myself on the show, we will also lead a particular character in animation. So we're also putting together pose libraries with various expressions, some lip sync shapes, and some body poses that really just allow the animators to work much faster once they get into their shots. So these are some early 2D designs for Pigtail. They were done by Jorge Capote. Just, experiments. This was well before we got into animation development, but he was doing this stuff early on to try to figure out who this character was going to be and how far we would need to take her in our animation. Some body poses by Jorge. He's great, a lot of fun stuff. So he was a huge inspiration to us. And here's a 2D test that he did early on. And this was really showing Pigtail's strength. She's a very strong character. So that was just some stuff for him. And now this is an expression test by the lead on this character, who is Anthony Gray. And again, he's taking inspiration from those 2D tests. I will see if I can loop this so you can watch it while I talk. And he's really just seeing how far he can push that rig before it breaks, trying to hit some of that appeal that Jorge had in his original designs. And so this is kind of the first step in the process to building our pose library for the animators and starting to give them expressions that they can use in their animation. Okay. Oh, I don't know how to, there we go. It's always tricky to get to the next slide. Oh, there should be audio here. Are you guys able to?
I think it's muted.
Yeah. I don't think I have control over it. I don't know. Should I play it again? Oh, it's muted here? Yeah, well, it's okay. There will be stuff that I need audio for, so if we can figure that out, that'd be good. But so this was a test where she is, Anthony was trying to show the more vulnerability in her character and in her personality. The directors really wanted her to feel a little more childlike. So even though she was this really strong character, she had this sort of like childlike sensibility about her. So that was something he was exploring there. Let's see, I'll try one more time. No, okay, we'll move on. So this is Kitty, some early concept drawings for her, our antagonist. And again, some more drawings from Jorge. Some great info here, as you can see, for modelers, riggers, and animators. And I love this low pose on her. It really reminds me of a leopard, like stalking their prey. The cat-like flexibility in her spine. So we're thinking she's a cat, so we really wanted to consider that as we were working. This is another early 2D test by Jorge. So we're looking at all this stuff as we are developing the characters in 3D. And you can see an early concept of Susan on the right here. Boop, there she is. And now this is a 3D test, CG, that Ludo Blanchot, who is the lead on Kitty, something he was testing out, obviously inspired by what Jorge had done there. And this one, again, I'm sorry there's no audio. Yeah. Okay, sorry. Technical difficulties. Anyway, I'll keep talking, but Ludo was the lead on Kitty, and he did a lot of really cool performance tests with her. So, and she was a character who was like really smooth, really confident, but also a little unsettling. She walks into a room and she talks to you, and okay, thanks, great. And you're not really sure what she's going to do next, much like a cat, like they may pounce, they may toy with their prey a little bit. So that was some of the stuff that Ludo was playing with here. And let's see if we can get some audio. Yeah.
Business time. You need a job, and I need some extra hands with a special kind of experience.
Yeah, so let's see. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, and then there was Susan, or AKA Doom. This is Doom. So this is what I saw when I first opened up a test shot with her in Anim Dev. And I told Ben Willis, our head of character animation, that I really like to lead Doom. I was a big fan of Natasha Lyonne, who voiced the character, and I just thought she'd be a really fun one to work on. But if I had known how much work she was going to be, I might have reconsidered. There were just a lot of things to figure out on her. So she's a bird-like humanoid, essentially. She has wings that are actually human arms, and she has human legs. So for a bird, the knees and the ankles were just in the wrong place, basically. And she has a beak, of course, with no teeth, although we did give her stunt teeth. And several sets of them, and that beak just required a lot of shaping, and it goes on and on. So, so the first thing, of course, was the wings. Not only did she have wings for her arms, but we hadn't really figured out how these wings and feathers were going to work until we got to animation. So we had a model and a rough idea of what the directors wanted in the design, but how we were going to implement that in 3D had not really been figured out yet. So first we tried this, which is essentially the wild robot wing setup with the coverts and the primary feathers and all that information, and it was just stuck to her arm. So we tried that first, because that seemed like the easiest way to go. And this is an early pose I did with this wing setup, just to try to match some concept art that we had. And it wasn't bad, but it wasn't great either. It was just too complicated. It was too much to control, really, for what we were going for. And it just wasn't hitting the director's vision, really. So we moved, well, here, this is me moving the rig around so you can kind of get a sense of what it was doing. You see it's breaking quite a bit as we bend the arm, because she's not a bird. She needs to bend her arms like a human, so it wasn't holding up, really. So it was just overly complex, so we decided to try something else, which we called feather fingers. So that's what this was. Of course, the question again was, will it bend? No, it will not. So we decided to try something else, which was this plane with the slits in it, and this was a drawover I think Pierre did. So then we had to go back to modeling a second time, and it would have to be re-rigged. So in the meantime, I worked on this animation test with her early rig. So you can see our concept model in the upper left. And this is, again, some more 2D animation by Jorge. So all I'm doing here is just trying to study how he is shaping certain things. Let me loop that. How he's shaping certain things, like her beak, the eyes, and also her hands. And also how he's moving through certain phonemes, which are the sounds that you make when you speak. And how he's using the teeth. You can see they just sort of pop on and off, and it totally worked. So I also studied a lot of Natasha Lyonne and how she talks through her teeth quite a bit. So we sort of played into that in some later tests that we did with Doom, and it just worked for her, so it was a win there. Back to the wing. So this is a drawing by Jorge again, and rigging needed each of these wing sections for her in the middle to be modeled out straight. So then we had to repose them to kind of bring her to a neutral that was ready for animation. But then, of course, will it bend? Well, kind of. It wasn't great. There was actually quite a bit of work going on under the hood to try to get from point A to point B with this arm bend. It required a lot of finesse, and we weren't really quite sure how it was going to work in shots, but I decided to try some full body poses anyway. So here are a couple of those, and we showed these to directors, and they said, I don't know, it kind of looks more like fur than a wing, more than feathers. So we went back to the drawing board, and then we tried this, which ultimately was just a merge of Plan A with the feather fingers and Plan B with the wing slits. We kind of merged those together, and that actually felt like the right idea. So with some shaping, we were able to get some more appealing flow through these feathers and some variation across each of these scalloped regions. And we tried some poses with her, so this was one of them. And this is in Primo, our animation software. This is what we were looking at. while we were animating her. And let's see, you can see, well, you saw how she looked in Rachel's Look Deb presentation, but this was our representation in Primo, which was feeling a lot better to everybody. And so finally we were starting to lock her down, and this took several months, and I think we had over 200 versions of her rig before we were like, okay, we did it. That's quite a lot for us anyway. So. And then the director said, oh, and she has to fly. So there was no way that her little baby arms were going to make a convincing bird in flight. So I tried this scaled up pose where we just really scaled the heck out of it and went for it and made her look like a raven in flight. And I will show those shots later so you can see what it actually looked like. Luckily, she's in the dark and it's kind of obscured, so we totally got away with it. But normally we don't scale the rigs that far. That's a no-no. And there's just another pose of her in flight. Her legs are bent all the wrong way for a bird, but I think it's pretty convincing. I don't know. And then finally, I was able to dig into some animation tests with her. So this is just an expressions test, which you saw in Look Deb, but this is how it looks to us in Primo. You can see the stunt teeth in there now. Yeah, so let's go to the next one. So as a character lead, it's also my job to help keep the characters on model as they are posing her. And this was especially tricky with Doom because of her beak. All of the characters and bad guys, you really need to pose to camera to make them super appealing, but it was absolutely mandatory for her because just a slight rotation of her head angle and you could really throw off the pose. So this is just, you know, things to keep in mind, just for her beak. And then I did a walk cycle with her. So even though her anatomy was different, making her feel like a bird was very important to the directors. So we bent her forward a bit and we hyperextended the knees so that it just felt more like bird leg anatomy. The wings back behind her was a suggestion by our head of character animation, Ben. And it worked really well. It just felt wrong to have her with her arms swinging by her sides. It didn't feel like a bird, so. And let me play that one more time. And I'm also just experimenting with like how quickly she turns her head, making it more like a bird, and how far she can turn her head, because I think birds can go like 270 degrees or something crazy. So we were having fun with that. And here she is, before and after. So both of these images are in Primo, our animation software. This is what the animators see. She looks different once she's rendered, but this is what we were going off of. So now she's ready to be animated in shots. She's come a long way. Oh, there we go. Okay, so what I'm going to show now, just one fun element of the animation process. This is shooting reference, which I don't know if a lot of people know. Animators do this a ton. It's very important that we have believable performances in there, and so we will shoot ourselves acting stuff out. So this is a series of shots that I did. I'm going to show the animation reference from, where she is, Doom is calling the cops on the bad guys. She's basically framing them and also betraying Snake's trust in her. So there was a lot of opportunity for nuance, and I wasn't sure how playful or how cold and detached the directors wanted her to be in this moment. We talked a lot about a lot in the launch, and so I just wanted to clarify with them what they were looking for. So I sort of showed them this menu of reference, so to speak, for their feedback. So let me play that.
Hello, Commissioner speaking.
Yes, ma'am. I got a hot tip. The bad guys are...
Okay, so it's very quick, I know. But I'll play it one more time. So you can see from the right to the left, it kind of goes from playful to cold. So I was getting their feedback on that.
Hello, Commissioner speaking.
Yes, ma'am. I got a hot tip. The bad guys are...
That's our ref room at DreamWorks, which is we have a lot of weird stuff in there, but we use it all the time. And they went with the middle one for that one. They really liked that. So here's the next shot.
Speaking.
Oh, that's
yes,
ma'am. This is the next shot.
What? Well, wait, who is...
Sorry, doll. Look, it's nothing personal.
So you see there's a lot there. Like normally I wouldn't throw this in front of a director, but both Pierre and JP were animators at DreamWorks. So they're very familiar with this whole process with reference, and they actually, I think, really enjoyed like having this as a way to start the conversation on the performance. So, and in that one, they really liked the top middle, for those of you who happen to see that one. And here's another.
Come on, man.
You are one twisted reptile.
So in this moment, it was kind of important to convey that Doom was intrigued by Snake's reaction. And so let me show you the actual
Hello, Commissioner speaking.
Yes, ma'am. I got a hot tip. The bad guys are holed up in a hangar 2 clicks north of the MoonX launch site.
What? Well, wait, who is...
Sorry, doll. Look, it's nothing personal.
You are so hot right now.
Snake!
Yeah?
You are one twisted reptile.
So, thanks. Oh, sorry.
Hey, Susan!
Actually,
Hey!
it's Doom. Susan is an alias.
Ooh, okay, so I promised some Doom flying shots. So there they are. These were animated by Dane Stogner, who's kind of like our resident flight expert in the animation department. So I'll play one more time, but look for that flight pose. It's in there.
Oh, hey, Susan!
Actually,
Hey!
it's Doom. Susan is an alias.
So he made it work. He made it work.
Oh, hey!
Oh, there we go. Okay, on to the next thing. So this is the Cairo Chase sequence. This is another example of be careful what you wish for, because I also told Ben that I wanted to do some action on this show. And he gave me this, which was basically a high-speed car chase through this crowded streets of Cairo. And it was crazy ambitious sequence. I think it's one of the hardest we've probably done at the studio. And also we had, I think, 15 animators on this sequence, most of who were new to the show and new to Bad Guys. They hadn't worked on the first one, so there was a lot to learn. And we had to do this sequence really early on in the show because it was so complex and every department needed a lot of time with it. So we got started on it right away. There's also a lot of stunt driving, so we had to learn about stunt driving, and vehicle mechanics had to be really accurate. That was really important to the directors. And there's a ton of crowds to deal with too, so there's a lot of work to be done on this. So one thing that we quickly realized was that we needed to amp up the energy and the speed. There was a need for speed. You can see here, there's an early version up top and a final version below of a shot that was animated by Gonzo Gonzalez. And here we really needed to push the spacing. Again, remember I was talking about that Bad Guys spacing. So this we needed to go really far with the car in those first few frames to just give it that impact that we needed. And this is obviously slowed down, but I will play it at speed so you can see. Let's do that again. So if you just kind of like cover up the bottom one and then cover up the top one, you can kind of see like the difference between the two, and you really feel the speed a lot more as it zips past camera in that first one. So that was a good lesson. We had to push the speed. There we go. Here's another example. Another thing we tried to do a lot in the sequence was just push things closer to camera. Like we kept getting that note, like just make it come at camera. So they really wanted to kind of like push things and make it feel like you were really in the action, and that made a huge difference. So you can see the layout up above and then the animation at the bottom, and how much further, I should just loop this, how much further the animator took that cop towards camera. And layout did a phenomenal job. They really gave us this amazing canvas to start with, and then we could just get in there and really have fun pushing things, and again amping up that excitement. So it was a lot of fun. And that shot was animated by Philippe Lebrun. And here's another example. I will loop that again. I'm sorry, I have to keep doing this looping thing, but so this one you can see layout actually came really close to camera, which was great, and then the animator just really pushed the speed of the car at the very end of the shot as it zooms out, and it just gave the car so much more power. So that was something we were really doing. So along with the suspension and the weight of the car moving appropriately to respond to that velocity, it was still believable. We thought, at least in our world. Here's another example. You can see in this one, it's almost like, let me play it. It's almost like the car's gonna hit you. I feel like I'm getting hit every time I watch that animation on the bottom. But it's really dynamic, especially when you watch it on a big screen. It really hits you. It's quite powerful. So a lot of fun with these. Okay, another big challenge we were affectionately calling the cop blob. So one goal that we had over the course of the sequence was to show these cops losing their mopeds, I guess they're called, and assembling into groups as they pursued the bad guys. So the first guy who takes off is actually tracking them throughout the sequence and ends up being sort of in a precarious position at the end, but he manages to make it through and follow them all the way to the end. But you can see they're sort of like collecting into little groups. That was all planned out and intentional. And then we saw this in layout. And we were like, how are we gonna do that? We had to have control over it in animation. It couldn't just be a simulation, unfortunately, because we needed to animate these characters. They needed to react independently to things and break apart, and so we wanted control, but we didn't have a lot of time to develop it. So one of our animators, Sam Massaro, put together this pose. I was like, please just set up a pose. So he took all the cops, which I think we had like 45 or something. He put them all into this pose, and you can see some of them don't have faces, so we had both high-res and low-res characters that we could swap in and out as needed if we needed to do facial animation on them. But if you rendered them as the low res, they would have a face, it just doesn't move. And we did keep that in the show, so if you're really paying attention, you can see like some of the characters are just like static faces, but it totally worked in the shots, and you don't notice, so. But this was super heavy. Like Primo's great animation software, we can get real-time playback, it plays at 24 frames per second. But this was just so heavy, it really dragged things down, so we needed the ability to swap into low-res characters as much as we could. Oh, and you can see at the bottom, that's that first guy that took off after the bad guys, so he ended up making it all the way through and carrying that heavy burden. Okay, let's go, keep going, keep going. Oh my God, I can't go, there we go. Sorry, okay.